Welcome to Cultural Heritage Data and Social Engagement. My name is Professor Schroeder. My students often call me Dr. S. I'm excited to be teaching this class, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know you and working with you. My research area is in an area called digital humanities, and that means using computers and digital methods to do research on literature, art, history, classics, philosophy, all those kinds of topics that you don't normally associate with computers. My particular research area is in Egypt, and particularly using digital humanities to study Egypt. So I'm teaching this course on cultural heritage data. Why does this course matter? Why are you taking this course? I'm going to give you 3 examples of why this course matters. One example, it's an example of cultural heritage in the news in recent years. You may have seen a number of protests about Confederate statues in the United States. So these are statues that honor leaders of the American Confederacy, which was that union of states or confederacy of states that seceded from the American Union in the 1800s. This statue in the picture on the left is a statue of Robert E. Lee in Virginia. Robert E. Lee was the primary Confederate general and a major figure in Confederate history. Some people argue these statues to Confederate leaders are about heritage. Having these statues are about their heritage and their Southern history and their history of their heritage, and that they have a right to have their heritage memorialized. Now, other people argue that these Confederates rebelled against the United States government and that they shouldn't have monuments, that these are monuments to slavery and the enslavement of many American ancestors. So protesters of all races and ethnicities were arguing about whether these statues needed to be removed from public squares, because they were not about just anyone of Southern heritage, but really were about enslavement, death, and that part of American heritage that is the legacy of slavery. What you see in these 2 other photos on the slide are activists who have projected other images or posed or spray painted on these monuments other aspects of American heritage. So in the bottom picture, you see images from Black Lives Matter protests projected in light onto the Confederate statue. Then on the top, you see 2 ballerinas posing using the Black Power salute at the base of the statue. In both of these images, people are using other cultural heritage and other culture, whether it's images from history, whether it's slogans, movements from dance, or movements, positions from political protests, or art. They're using other forms of cultural heritage to transform this monument, which I think is really interesting. And this whole phenomenon raises a lot of questions. First of all, it's very engaging. So it gets to the piece of social engagement, right? These images of protests circulated widely in the press. They also raise questions whose heritage counts as cultural heritage. Why are certain monuments in the public square to begin with? Should they stay there? But why are they there to begin with? Does all heritage deserve to be celebrated? How do we document change in cultural heritage over time? These pictures prompted people to engage in some of these questions about heritage. Another example is in Turkey, where there's a very famous ancient church, an ancient cathedral called the Hagia Sophia. Its name comes from the Greek Orthodox tradition and the Greek language, meaning holy wisdom, Hagia Sophia. It's a church in the Greek Orthodox tradition and is considered a major Greek Orthodox Christian heritage monument. It's in Istanbul, Turkey, and was transformed into a mosque later in history when Turkey became more predominantly Muslim. It has not been a working mosque for some time but it has been recognized as a piece of Turkish cultural heritage that didn't belong exclusively to one religious group or another. It was basically both a monument and a museum. In the summer of 2020, however, the Turkish government changed the status of Hagia Sophia so that it would become a working mosque again, where people could gather in it for prayer. So now you see this image of a Friday prayer on the right. On the top is another picture of its exterior, where you can see it's both a church and then it's got these minarets as a mosque. This is a hugely contested issue. Should it be a church? Should it be a mosque? Should it be a national monument that is not a religious site of worship, the active site of worship anymore? Is the Turkish government doing the right thing? Scholars photographed the entire Hagia Sophia before it was turned into an active mosque in order to preserve what it looks like before this transformation. They took digital photographs and digital scans to preserve this piece of cultural heritage for eternity in this particular form. This digital data, the images and scans, are cultural heritage data. They're digital images, digital data, digital replicas of this monument. So this raises a question. Is digital preservation through scans and photographs and creating digital models the same thing as the monument itself being preserved? Or is it different? Is digital preservation different? Is digital preservation a good way to do both? To have a cultural heritage monument as an active site for a community to worship in, while also preserving its history as a heritage monument for the world? And then how do we preserve cultural heritage when it's the heritage of multiple people who have multiple different ideas on how it should be preserved? Lots of questions. My third example is the example in Ukraine. Many of you have probably heard about the war Russia launched by invading Ukraine. This is another example of cultural heritage data issues. During war, cultural heritage is often a casualty. Sites and art are destroyed by weapons or advancing armies. Art is often stolen. Libraries, museums, archives, music and film archives, all can be damaged. Also, people create art, literature, and music in response to war. Right? In the United States in the 1960s, Americans protested American involvement in Vietnam and the draft through music and art. Today, a group of international librarians, scholars, and just regular people has created an initiative to preserve Ukrainian digital cultural heritage data. Their website is sucho.org, and from a distance, they preserve cultural websites in Ukraine, and they preserve digital responses to the war, like memes. The meme wall in the image on the top is a preservation of memes about the war. This project also raises important questions. How can we use digital methods to protect cultural heritage from destruction in war? Can a global community protect cultural heritage from afar? How has digital communication changed the definition of cultural heritage? Memes, are they real-time cultural responses to war? Are they heritage? So these are all some examples of how heritage has been in the news. We will be studying other examples of digital cultural heritage and cultural heritage data throughout the semester with respect to artifacts, buildings, stories, art books, all specifically in the context of a digital world.